Get ready for a story full of surprises, romance, and twists that will keep you hooked until the end. In Seattle, Emily Carter, a young law intern with a simple life, sees her world turned upside down after a blind date that goes completely wrong. Or could it be the start of something unexpected? When a misunderstanding puts her face to face with Ethan Moore, a mysterious and charming man, she has no idea she's about to enter a game of appearances, secrets, and emotions that will change everything. Brace yourself for a journey of laughter, tension, and a shocking finale. The cool spring air in Seattle carried the aroma of roasted coffee and sea breeze as Emily Carter walked through the bustling downtown streets. At 25 years old, Emily was a law intern at the prestigious Moore & Associates, a young woman with bright brown eyes and chestnut hair tied up in a messy bun, reflecting her hectic life. Despite her talent and determination, life wasn't easy. She shared a modest apartment with her mother Susan in Capitol Hill and could barely pay the bills. The pressure to climb the career ladder was constant, but on that Friday night, the weight on her shoulders came from another source: a blind date. Susan, a 52-year-old woman with a big heart and even bigger stubbornness, insisted that Emily needed a partner. "You can't live just for work, sweetheart," Susan would say while serving soup in the small apartment kitchen. "You're young, smart, but you need someone to take care of you." Emily rolled her eyes, but her mother's concerned tone always made her give in. Susan had arranged the date with a lawyer named Brian Thompson, recommended by a church friend. "He's perfect, Emily. A lawyer, stable, and they say he's charming." Exhausted from previous disappointing dates, Emily agreed only to avoid another argument. The chosen restaurant, Le Bistro Étoile, was an elegant place in the heart of Seattle, with soft lighting, white linen tablecloths, and a stunning view of Puget Sound. Emily, wearing a simple blue dress and worn shoes, felt out of place as she entered. The maitre d', a man with arched eyebrows, looked her up and down before asking, "Reservation under whose name?" Emily hesitated. I think it's Thompson or Carter. I'm not entirely sure." The maitre d' frowned but led her to a cornered table where a man in a dark suit was already seated. The man looked up from his phone, and Emily caught her breath for a moment. He was striking: neatly trimmed brown hair, green eyes that seemed to see through her, and a subtle smile that exuded confidence. His tailored suit and thin-framed glasses gave him an air of sophistication, but there was something warm in his gaze. "You must be Emily," he said, standing with a courtesy that seemed rehearsed. "I'm your date." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, but Emily, nervous, didn't notice. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sitting down quickly. "My mom was so insistent about this date that I almost backed out. You're Brian, right?" The man tilted his head, his smile widening. "Something like that," he replied, his voice deep and amused. Emily, relieved that he didn't seem like a disaster compared to her previous dates, started talking. She shared about her work as an intern, the long hours reviewing contracts, and even confessed her passion for mystery novels. He listened attentively, asking insightful questions and laughing at her shy jokes. The conversation flowed with an ease Emily hadn't expected. He spoke little about himself, mentioning only that he worked in corporate law and liked Seattle for its vibrant energy. As they shared a crème brûlée dessert, Emily began to relax. "You're not like the other guys my mom tried to set me up with," she said, laughing. "Most of them just talk about themselves." He smiled, but his eyes sparkled with something Emily couldn't quite decipher. "You're different too," he replied. "You don't seem to be here just out of obligation." Emily blushed, surprised by the comment. For the first time in months, she felt at ease. But the moment was interrupted when the maitre d' reappeared, looking embarrassed. "Miss Carter, I'm afraid there's been a mistake," he said, lowering his voice. "Your table is that one over there." He pointed to another table, where a middle-aged man with crooked glasses and an impatient expression was waiting. Emily froze. "What?" She looked at the man in front of her, who now seemed slightly amused. "You're not Brian Thompson?" she asked, her face burning with embarrassment. "I'm afraid not," he replied, standing calmly. "I'm Ethan. Ethan Moore. But I must say, it was a pleasure to meet you, Emily." He extended his hand and she, stunned, shook it. "I hope to see you again." Before Emily could respond, he walked away, leaving her alone with her confusion. The real Brian Thompson, when Emily finally sat at the correct table, was exactly what she feared. Arrogant, dull, and more interested in talking about his cases than listening to her. After 10 minutes, she made an excuse and fled the restaurant. That night, lying in her bed, Emily couldn't stop thinking about the stranger named Ethan. Who was he? Why didn't he correct the mistake right away? And why, despite the humiliation, did she feel a strange warmth when remembering his smile? Meanwhile, across town, in a penthouse apartment overlooking the Space Needle, Ethan Moore typed something on his laptop. He opened the Moore & Associates website and found Emily Carter's photo in the interns section. "Interesting," he murmured to himself, a plan beginning to form in his mind. In Emily's apartment, Susan was waiting with a gleam in her eyes. "So how was Brian?" she asked, serving tea. Emily sighed, deciding not to share the full fiasco. "It didn't work out, Mom, but I met someone different." Susan raised an eyebrow, but Emily gave no details. She herself didn't understand what she felt. It was just a mistake, a fleeting moment, or so she thought. Meanwhile, Emily's life went on. She woke up at 6 in the morning, took the bus downtown, and dove into piles of documents at the firm. But something about that night at Le Bistro Étoile stayed etched in her memory. She didn't know that, in a few days, her life would change irreversibly. Ethan Moore, the man she mistook for her date, wasn't just a stranger. He was the CEO of Moore & Associates, a mysterious millionaire hiding his own secrets. And fate, with its peculiar sense of humor, was about to put them on the same path again. The sun rose over Seattle, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, as Emily Carter stepped off the bus at the corner of Fifth Avenue. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of coffee from street vendors and the distant sound of seagulls. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, feeling the weight of another day at Moore & Associates, the law firm where she worked as an intern. At 25 years old, Emily was a mix of determination and exhaustion. Her nights were short, split between reviewing contracts and helping her mother, Susan, with household chores. The fiasco of the blind date at Le Bistro Étoile still lingered in her mind, especially the face of Ethan Moore, the stranger she mistook for her date. "A stupid mistake," she repeated to herself, trying to forget the warmth she felt recalling his smile. But life offered no pause for daydreams, and she needed to focus on work. Moore & Associates occupied the upper floors of a glass skyscraper in downtown Seattle, with views stretching from Puget Sound to Mount Rainier on clear days. Emily entered the lobby, where the security guard, a man named Joe with a kind smile, waved at her. "Tough day today, Emily?" he asked. "Always, Joe," she replied, forcing a smile as she stepped into the elevator. On the 22nd floor, the office was a maze of cubicles and glass-walled rooms, where sharply dressed lawyers and overworked interns moved at a frenetic pace. Emily settled into her small cubicle, surrounded by stacks of folders and an old monitor that hummed. Her task for the day was to review a corporate merger contract, but her mind wandered to the previous night. Who was Ethan Moore? Why did he seem so at ease with the misunderstanding? As she typed, she heard a growing buzz among her colleagues. "Have you seen the new CEO?" asked an excited voice. It was Rachel Bennett, a fellow intern known for her competitiveness and sharp tongue. Rachel, with her impeccably straightened blonde hair and a blazer that screamed ambition, leaned over Emily's cubicle. "They say he's a genius. Young, a millionaire, never lost a case, and my God, he's gorgeous." Emily rolled her eyes. "I don't care about CEOs, Rachel. I just want to finish this before lunch." Rachel laughed sarcastically. "You're not dull, Emily. It doesn't hurt to dream big." Emily ignored the comment but felt a pang of irritation. Rachel always seemed one step ahead, currying favor with senior lawyers while Emily worked quietly. The buzz grew louder when the conference room door opened. The department head, Mr. Larson, a middle-aged man with a shiny bald head, appeared with a forced smile. "Everyone, I want you in the conference room in 10 minutes. The new CEO wants to introduce himself." Emily sighed, closing the document on her computer. Meetings like this were rare, and she hated the pomp that came with executives' arrivals. She grabbed her notebook and followed the stream of colleagues to the glass-walled room, where chairs were already lined up in perfect rows. When everyone was seated, Mr. Larson stepped up to the small podium. "It's with great pleasure that I introduce the new CEO of Moore & Associates, a visionary leader who has taken our firm to new heights. Please welcome Ethan Moore." The name hit Emily like an electric shock. It couldn't be. She looked up, and there he was, the man from the restaurant with the same impeccable suit, the same piercing green eyes. Ethan stepped up to the podium, exuding quiet authority. "Thank you, Larson," he said, his firm voice echoing through the room. "I'm here to continue the legacy of Moore & Associates, but also to bring change. I want to meet each of you and understand how we can grow." Together, his eyes scanned the room, and for a brief moment they met Emily's. Her face burned. Ethan Moore, the man she shared a dessert with by mistake, was the CEO of the firm. Not just any lawyer, but the ultimate boss, a millionaire whose reputation as a legal genius was legendary. How did she not know? Rachel, sitting beside her, noticed Emily's expression and whispered, "What's wrong? You look like you saw a ghost." Emily shook her head, muttering a nothing while trying to process the revelation. Ethan continued his speech, talking about innovation and commitment, but Emily barely listened. Her mind was in a loop. Did he know who she was? Why didn't he say anything at the restaurant? After the meeting, Emily returned to her cubicle, her heart racing. She tried to focus, but Ethan's image wouldn't leave her mind. Meanwhile, across the office, Ethan was in his corner office, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows. He flipped through a report, but his mind was elsewhere. Emily Carter. He remembered her clearly. Her shy laugh, her awkward sincerity, the way she talked about her dreams without any pretense. Different from the people he knew in his business world, where everyone seemed to want something from him. But there was more at play. Ethan picked up the phone and called his assistant, Mark. "I want the dossier on all the interns. Start with Emily Carter." That night, at home, Emily faced another interrogation from Susan. "You're so distracted, sweetheart." "What happened at work?" Susan asked, peeling potatoes in the kitchen. Emily hesitated. Telling her she mistook the firm's CEO for her blind date seemed ridiculous. "Just a busy day, Mom," she said, stirring the soup on the stove. But Susan didn't let up. "And that Brian. You said you met someone different. Who was it?" Emily sighed. "It was no one, Mom, just a misunderstanding." Susan frowned but didn't press further. She went back to talking about Brian, suggesting Emily give him another chance. "You need stability, Emily. You can't be alone forever." As Susan spoke, Emily thought of Ethan. He was untouchable, someone from a different world with his expensive suit and powerful position. But why did he let the mistake go on at the restaurant? And why, even now, did she feel a shiver thinking of him? On the other side of town, Ethan was in his penthouse, looking out at Seattle's lit-up skyline. He opened Emily's dossier on his laptop. A dedicated intern, excellent grades in law school, but a life marked by financial struggles. Something stirred in him. He knew his family, especially his mother Victoria, was pressuring him to marry. Claire Dawson, the daughter of an investment magnate. It was a strategic marriage planned to strengthen the Moore family's business. But Ethan hated the idea. He wanted freedom, not a corporate alliance. While sipping whiskey, Ethan thought of Emily. Maybe she was the solution. Not a romance, of course. He didn't believe in fairy tales, but a partnership, something that could benefit them both. He needed an escape from his family's pressures, and Emily, with her simple life and real problems, seemed like someone who could understand a deal. He closed the laptop, decided. At the next opportunity, he would approach her, Not as the man from the restaurant, but as the CEO who could change the course of her life. Emily, meanwhile, lay on her narrow bed, the noise of Capitol Hill traffic filtering through the window. She tried to read a book, but her mind kept returning. To Ethan. "He's just a guy," she muttered to herself. "A guy who's out of my league." But deep down, she felt something big was coming. Fate, with its unpredictable ways, was already writing the next chapter. Monday morning in Seattle dawned gray, with heavy clouds hanging over the horizon, and a fine drizzle leaving the sidewalks glistening. Emily Carter hurried along Fifth Avenue, clutching a worn umbrella while trying to protect the papers in her. The weekend hadn't been enough to erase Ethan Moore from her mind. Since the meeting at Moore & Associates, where she discovered that the man from the blind date was the firm's CEO, Emily wavered between embarrassment and curiosity. How could someone so powerful have let the restaurant misunderstanding go on? And why, every time she thought of him, did her heart race? She shook her head, trying to focus. "Focus, Emily," she muttered to herself. "You're an intern, he's the boss. End of story." On the 22nd floor of Moore & Associates, the office was in its usual rhythm. Phones ringing, printers humming, and lawyers discussing in hushed tones. Emily reached her cubicle where a stack of contracts awaited her. She had barely started reviewing a document when Rachel Bennett appeared, with a smile that mixed curiosity and malice. "So, Emily, what did you think of our new CEO?" Rachel asked, leaning on the cubicle partition. "He's everything they say, isn't he? Brilliant, charming, and single." Emily forced a smile. "I didn't notice. I'm busy, Rachel." The colleague laughed, but her eyes narrowed as if trying to decipher something. "You're so predictable. But be careful. He's not the type to waste time with interns." The comment cut like a knife, but Emily just shrugged, hiding her irritation. As she typed, Emily noticed movement in the glass-walled meeting room. Ethan Moore was there, talking with Mr. Larson and other senior lawyers. He looked even more imposing under the office lights, with a navy blue suit that highlighted his confident posture. His eyes scanned the room, and for a moment they met hers. Emily quickly looked away, feeling her face burn. "He probably doesn't even remember me," she thought, trying to convince herself. But minutes later, an internal message popped up on her computer screen. "Emily Carter, please report to Mr. Moore's office at 10 a.m. Subject, special project." Her heart raced. A project? Or did he want to talk about the restaurant? At 10 a.m. sharp, Emily knocked on the door of Ethan's office, a spacious room with panoramic windows and a polished mahogany desk. "Come in," said Ethan's deep voice. She entered, holding her notebook like a shield. Ethan was standing, looking out the window at Seattle's skyline. "Sit down, Miss Carter," he said, turning with a smile that was both professional and intriguing. "Thank you for coming." Emily sat tense. "Is it about the merger contract? I made the revisions, but—" He raised a hand, interrupting her. "It's not about work, at least not exactly." Ethan sat at the desk, his eyes fixed on her. "You remember Friday at Le Bistro Étoile?" Emily swallowed hard, the embarrassment rushing back. "Yes. I'm sorry about that. It was a stupid mistake. I didn't know who you were." He laughed, a low, genuine sound. "No need to apologize. In fact, I enjoyed our conversation. You were refreshing." Emily frowned, confused. "Refreshing?" Ethan leaned forward, his tone now more serious. "I'll be direct, Emily. I need your help, and I think you need mine too," he explained, with a calm that contrasted with the audacity of the proposal. Ethan came from a powerful family, the Moores, who controlled not only the firm but investments across the Pacific Northwest. His mother, Victoria, was determined to marry him to Claire Dawson, the daughter of an investment magnate, to seal a business alliance. "I don't want that marriage," he said, his eyes hardening. "But my family doesn't take no for an answer. I need a way out, something that makes them back off without causing a scandal." Emily listened, stunned. "And where do I come in?" she asked, her voice hesitant. "Here's the proposal," Ethan continued. "I want us to pretend to be a couple. You help me convince my family that I'm committed, and I help you with whatever problem you have." He paused, watching her. "I know your mother is pressuring you to find someone, and I know your financial situation isn't easy. I can help with that. And, who knows, maybe working directly with me could open doors at the firm." Emily blinked, trying to process. "You're asking me to pretend to be your girlfriend, like a contract?" Ethan nodded. "Exactly. A professional arrangement with clear rules. No feelings, just business." Emily felt her head spin. It was insane. Pretend to be in a relationship with the firm's CEO. But at the same time, she thought of Susan, who lately seemed frailer, worried about the future. The house in Capitol Hill, where they lived, was under threat from a real estate project offering meager compensation. The extra money from a deal with Ethan could make a difference. Still, something in her resisted. "Why me?" she asked, her voice firm despite the insecurity. "You could choose anyone. Someone like Rachel, who's dying for this." Ethan smiled, but there was a weight in his gaze. "Because you don't seem to want anything from me beyond what's fair, and frankly, you made me laugh at the restaurant. That's rare." The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Mark, Ethan's assistant, entered with a folder. "Mr. Moore, the report you requested." Ethan nodded, dismissing him, but not before Mark cast a curious glance at Emily. When they were alone again, Ethan handed her a document. "Think about it," he said. "These are the terms of the agreement. Read it, adjust what you want. But I need an answer by tomorrow." Emily took the paper, still dazed. "And if I say no?" Ethan tilted his head. "Then we move on as if nothing happened. But I don't think you'll say no." Back at her cubicle, Emily read the document. In secret, it was a simple contract. They would pretend to be a couple at social and family events for 3 months, with Ethan covering specific expenses for Emily, like rent or Susan's medical bills. In return, she would help him avoid the marriage. To Claire, it all seemed professional, but something in Ethan's tone, that mix of confidence and vulnerability, left her uneasy. She tucked the document into her bag, determined to think it over carefully. That night at home, Susan noticed Emily's distraction. "What's going on, sweetheart? You look like you saw a UFO." Emily laughed but didn't share anything. "Just work, Mom. A new project." Susan pressed, talking about the importance of finding a partner, but Emily barely listened. Her mind was on Ethan and the proposal. It was a chance to solve problems, but also a risk. What if someone at the office found out? What if Rachel, with her nose for gossip, started to suspect? Meanwhile, in Ethan's penthouse, he looked out at the lit-up city, a glass of whiskey in hand. He knew he was playing a high-stakes game. Choosing Emily wasn't just a matter of convenience. There was something about her, an authenticity, he rarely saw in his world of power plays. But he also knew the plan wasn't foolproof. Claire Dawson, the woman his family wanted him to marry, wasn't someone who took rejection lightly. And deep down, Ethan felt that his connection with Emily, even if fake, could complicate things more than he anticipated. Emily, lying in her bed, reread the contract under the dim light of her lamp. Each line felt like a door to a new world, full of possibilities and dangers. She closed her eyes, Ethan's face flashing in her mind. "It's just a deal," she told herself. But deep down, a little voice whispered that nothing would be as simple as it seemed. The following week passed like a blur for Emily Carter, with days blending into a frenetic routine of work at Moore & Associates and carefully orchestrated appearances with Ethan Moore. The contract she had signed still felt like a surreal decision, as if she had stepped into a movie where she was the unlikely protagonist. Seattle, with its gleaming skyscrapers and the constant hum of traffic, became the backdrop for a charade that for Emily oscillated between ridiculous and thrilling. She and Ethan had agreed to appear together at social and family events, starting with small gatherings to establish the credibility of their relationship. But as the days went by, Emily realized that pretending to be the girlfriend of the Millionaire CEO was more complicated than it seemed. The first event was a firm reception at an event hall in downtown Seattle, with a view of the iconic space. Needle? Emily, wearing a borrowed black dress, felt like an imposter among the senior lawyers and their expensive suits. Ethan, on the other hand, moved with ease, greeting colleagues with a confident smile. He introduced her as his partner, a word that sounded strange to Emily's ears but made everyone's eyes widen. "Emily Carter, from our intern team," Ethan said, lightly placing his hand on her back. The touch, though part of the act, sent a shiver down her spine. She smiled, trying to seem natural, while answering vague questions about how they met. "It was an unexpected encounter," she said, laughing nervously, while Ethan chimed in with rehearsed charm. "Let's just say fate has a sense of humor." Rachel Bennett, ever watchful, observed from across the room. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Emily beside Ethan, and a sour smile formed on her lips. Later, in the restroom, Rachel cornered Emily as she touched up her lipstick. "So, you and Ethan Moore, huh? How does an intern land such a big fish?" Rachel asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Emily swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "It's not what you think, Rachel. We're just friends." Rachel laughed, crossing her arms. "Friends, don't make me laugh. You think you can climb the career ladder by sleeping with the boss? Everyone's talking about it." The words hit Emily like a punch, but she refused to give in. "Think what you want, Rachel. I know what I'm doing." She left the restroom, her heart pounding, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. Meanwhile, at home, Susan's health began to worry. Emily noticed her mother was paler, with a persistent cough she tried to brush off. "It's just a cold, sweetheart," Susan said, but Emily insisted on scheduling a doctor's appointment. The house in Capitol Hill, an old townhouse Susan had bought with years of sacrifice, was the center of their lives, but letters from the real estate project kept arriving, demanding they sell for a pittance. Emily knew the money promised by Ethan in the contract could help with medical bills and maybe even save the house, but the idea of depending on him bothered her. Still, she needed to keep up the charade, especially to reassure Susan, who beamed when she heard Emily was dating someone special. The next event was a dinner at the Moore family's country house on the outskirts of Seattle in Bellevue. The mansion, with its impeccable gardens and a view of Lake Washington, was a reminder of the gulf between Emily's world and Ethan's. Victoria Moore, Ethan's mother, was an elegant woman with impeccably styled gray hair and a gaze that seemed to dissect anyone. She greeted Emily with cold courtesy, but her questions were sharp. "So, Miss Carter, you're an intern at my Ethan's firm? How interesting." The tone suggested interesting was the opposite of what she thought. Ethan, sensing Emily's discomfort, stayed by her side, holding her hand under the table. "Emily is brilliant, Mom. She has a promising future," he said, with a firmness that surprised Emily. During dinner, Emily tried to keep up, but the conversations about investments and vacations in the Maldives made her feel out of place. That's when Ethan surprised her. Noticing she was quiet, he brought up a legal case Emily had reviewed at the office, praising her attention to detail. "She caught an error our senior lawyers missed," he said, making Victoria raise an eyebrow. For the first time, Emily felt seen not just as the fake girlfriend, but as a professional. When they drove back to the city in Ethan's car, she murmured a "thank you." He just smiled. "You deserve it, Emily, don't forget that." But tension at the office was growing. Rachel spread rumors suggesting Emily was using Ethan to advance her career. "She's just an opportunist," Emily overheard a colleague whisper in the hallway. The pressure was affecting her performance, and she made a mistake in a report, earning a reprimand from a senior lawyer. Ethan, upon hearing about it, called her to his office. "Are you okay?" he asked, with genuine concern that caught her off guard. "I'm trying," she admitted. "It's not easy pretending all this and still dealing with work." Ethan nodded, thoughtful. "If you need anything, tell me. This deal is meant to help both of us, remember?" For the first time, Emily saw a more human side to him, something beyond the untouchable CEO. Their connection began to shift. During a hospital visit with Susan, Ethan showed up unexpectedly. bringing flowers and chatting with Susan as if they were old friends. "You picked a good guy, Emily," Susan said afterward, her eyes shining. Emily smiled, but felt a pang in her chest. It was all a lie, wasn't it? So why, when Ethan drove her home and their fingers brushed as he handed her the bouquet, did she feel something she couldn't explain? The final blow came with the arrival of Claire Dawson, the woman Ethan's family wanted him to marry. Claire appeared at the firm, tall, blonde, and with an air of someone who always got what she wanted. She greeted Ethan with familiarity, completely ignoring Emily. "Ethan, your mother told me we need to discuss business, and maybe something more," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Emily, standing nearby, felt invisible. Later, Claire approached her in the hallway. "You're the intern who's been hanging around Ethan, right? Enjoy it while it lasts. He has bigger obligations." The tone was cutting, and Emily felt her insecurity grow. She looked at Ethan, who was talking with Claire across the office, and wondered if she was really prepared for what lay ahead. That night, alone in her room, Emily reread the contract, the words now feeling heavier. She wanted to believe it was just a deal, but every moment with Ethan, his compliments, his kind gestures, the look that seemed to truly see her, made everything more confusing. Meanwhile, in Ethan's penthouse, he stared at a photo of Emily in the firm's dossier. He knew Claire and her family were pressing, and that office rumors could complicate everything. But for the first time, he found himself thinking not about the deal, but about Emily as something more. And that, he knew, was dangerous. The rain fell heavily in Seattle, drumming against the windows of Emily Carter's townhouse in Capitol Hill. It was one of those nights when the city seemed to shrink under the weight of the gray sky. And Emily, sitting at the kitchen table, felt the same weight on her shoulders. The contract with Ethan Moore, which initially seemed like a practical solution, now suffocated her with doubts. Pretending to be the girlfriend of the Moore and Associates CEO put her at the center of curious stares and malicious gossip at the office, while her mother Susan's health worsened. But what really kept her awake was the letter she found in the mail that morning. A final notice from the real estate project threatening to take her family's home. The compensation offer was a fraction of the property's value, insufficient to secure a new home. Emily clutched the letter to her chest, feeling a mix of anger and despair. That house was more than bricks and mortar. It was her mother's history, a refuge built through years of sacrifice. At the office, the tension was palpable. Emily tried to stay focused, reviewing contracts with almost obsessive precision, but the rumors spread by Rachel Bennett haunted her. "She thinks she's special because of Ethan," Emily overheard from a group of colleagues in the break room. Rachel, with her venomous smile, seemed to be everywhere, fueling the gossip. "An intern with the CEO? That won't last," she said to a senior lawyer, loud enough for Emily to hear. Emily's insecurity grew, but she refused to let Rachel win. "Let them think what they want," she muttered, organizing a stack of documents. Yet, every suspicious glance and whisper made her question whether keeping up the charade with Ethan was worth it. That afternoon, Ethan called her to his office. He was behind his mahogany desk, sleeves rolled up, giving him a less formal, almost approachable air. "Emily, we need to talk about the next event," he said, handing her an invitation to a charity gala in Seattle, where the city's elite would gather. "It'll be a good opportunity to reinforce our story." Emily nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She hesitated, then decided to speak. "Ethan, can I ask you something? Do you know about the real estate project in Capitol Hill? The one trying to buy my mom's house?" Ethan frowned, confused. "Vaguely. It's a big development, but I'm not directly involved. Why?" Emily took a deep breath, handing him the letter. "They're pressuring my mom to sell. It's our home, Ethan. We have nowhere else to go." Ethan read the letter, his face hardening. "This isn't right," he said, his voice low but firm. "I'll look into it, I promise." Emily wanted to believe him, but part of her wondered if he could really help. After all, Moore and Associates had clients in the real estate sector. and Ethan, as CEO, might have conflicts of interest. Still, his serious gaze made her feel for a moment that she wasn't alone. "Thank you," she murmured before returning to work. But the situation at the office only worsened. Rachel, now bolder, began spreading insinuations directly to Claire Dawson, who appeared frequently at the firm, always with an air of superiority. During a coffee break, Claire approached Emily in the break room, holding a cappuccino with a cold smile. "You must be Emily Carter," she said, her tone laced with disdain. "I've heard a lot about you. Ethan is generous, isn't he? Helping an intern with personal problems." Emily felt her blood boil but kept her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about, Miss Dawson. Ethan and I work together." Claire laughed, a cutting sound. "Work together? Sure. Just don't forget where you stand, dear. Ethan has responsibilities that go beyond charity." She walked away, leaving Emily trembling with anger. That night, Emily arrived home exhausted, finding Susan sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked, noticing Susan's red eyes. "Just tired, sweetheart," Susan replied, forcing a smile. "And that boyfriend of yours? When will I meet him properly?" Emily hesitated, the weight of the lie growing. "Soon, Mom. He's busy." Susan nodded, but there was a sadness in her gaze that broke Emily's heart. She decided not to mention the real estate letter, not wanting to worry her further. The next day, the bomb dropped. Emily was reviewing a case when she discovered, through an internal email accidentally sent to her, that Moore and Associates represented the company behind the Capitol Hill real estate project. The shock left her paralyzed. Did Ethan know? Was he lying when he said he'd investigate? Without thinking, she marched to his office, the printed email in hand. "Did you know about this?" she asked, tossing the paper on his desk. Ethan, surprised, read the email, his face paling. "Emily, I swear I had no idea. This is with the corporate client department. I don't oversee every case." She shook her head, her eyes welling up. "You're the CEO, Ethan. How could you not know? This is my home, my life." Her voice trembled and Ethan stood, trying to calm her. "I'll fix this, trust me." But Emily was already leaving, her trust shaken. The situation worsened when Rachel somehow found out about the confrontation. She seized the opportunity to fuel the rumors, whispering to colleagues that Emily was making a scene to manipulate Ethan. When Claire appeared at the firm again, Rachel approached her, revealing the fake agreement between Emily and Ethan. "She's pretending to be his girlfriend to get favors," Rachel said, a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. Claire, furious, confronted Ethan in front of other employees. "Is it true, Ethan? You're playing boyfriend with an intern while your family expects you to honor your commitments?" Ethan, keeping his cool, responded coldly. "My personal life is none of your business, Claire." But the damage was done. Emily, who witnessed the scene from afar, felt exposed, humiliated. That night, alone in her room, Emily cried. The agreement, which seemed like a solution, was now a trap. She thought of Susan, the house, the job she loved, but which now felt like a minefield. Ethan, meanwhile, was in his penthouse, reviewing documents about the real estate project. He called his assistant Mark with a clear order. "I want every detail on this Capitol Hill project, now." He knew he needed to act fast, not just to save Emily's house, but to prove to her that he was trustworthy. But deep down, he also felt something new, a need to protect her that went beyond the contract. Emily, looking out at the relentless rain through her window, decided she needed to rethink everything. The agreement with Ethan was destroying her peace, and Claire's arrival and Rachel's rumors made it unbearable. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Ethan. "We need to talk. This isn't working." But before sending, she hesitated. His face, the way he defended her, still lingered in her mind. She deleted the message, unaware that Ethan's next move would change everything. The morning in Seattle dawned with a timid sun, breaking through the clouds that had dominated the city for days. For Emily Carter, however, the weight of the storm still hung over her. The confrontation with Ethan Moore about the real estate project threatening her mother Susan's house had left her shaken. The revelation that Moore and Associates was involved in the development that could take away her home made her question everything. Her trust in Ethan, the agreement they had made, and even her own feelings, which, against her will, were beginning to cross the boundaries of the contract. Emily felt trapped in a dead end, torn between the need to protect her family and the confusion Ethan stirred in her heart. At the office, the atmosphere was a minefield. Emily tried to keep her head down, focusing on her tasks, but the colleagues' stares were impossible to ignore. Rachel Bennett, with her talent for intrigue, had spread gossip about Emily and Ethan's fake relationship, and now every whisper seemed to carry an accusation. During a coffee break, Emily overheard a junior lawyer comment, "She must think she's clever, fooling the CEO." The words stung, but Emily refused to give in to tears. She squared her shoulders, determined to prove her worth through her work, not the gossip. However, Claire Dawson's constant presence at the firm made everything harder. Claire, with her air of superiority and calculated smiles, seemed to be everywhere, always near Ethan, as if staking her claim. Ethan, meanwhile, was determined to fix things. After the argument with Emily, he spent the night reviewing documents and internal emails about the Capitol Hill real estate project. What he discovered infuriated him. The Moore and Associates board of directors, led by a senior executive named Richard Hayes, had approved representing the real estate company without his direct knowledge. It was a strategic move to profit from Seattle's real estate boom, but Ethan now saw the human cost, especially for Emily. He called an emergency board meeting, his sharp voice echoing in the conference room. "How did this go unnoticed by me?" he demanded, holding the project report. Richard, a gray-haired man with a shrewd gaze, responded calmly, "You were busy with mergers, Ethan. We trusted the corporate department to handle it." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "This decision affects people, Richard. People who work for us. This stops now." Meanwhile, Emily faced her own challenges. Susan, whose health seemed to worsen daily, was admitted to a Seattle hospital for tests. Emily spent her nights by her mother's side, holding her hand as she slept, her heart heavy with uncertainty. During one of these visits, she received an unexpected call from Ethan. "Emily, I'm at the hospital," he said, his voice tense. "Can I talk to you?" Surprised, she agreed, meeting him in the lobby. He looked different, less the untouchable CEO and more a concerned man. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be," he began, "but I'm taking steps about the project. No one's taking your mother's house." Emily wanted to believe him, but the hurt still burned. "You said you didn't know, Ethan. How can I trust you now?" He looked into her eyes, his sincerity almost tangible. "Because I'm here, Emily, and I'll prove I'm worth your trust." The conversation was interrupted by a nurse, but the moment lingered with Emily. She returned to Susan's room, her mind spinning. Ethan seemed genuine, but the betrayal of the email still hurt. She decided to keep the agreement, at least for now, to ensure her mother's financial security. But the tension exploded at the next event, the charity gala at the Four Seasons, a glittering ballroom filled with wealthy Seattleites. Emily, wearing a borrowed green dress that made her feel slightly more confident, stood beside Ethan, smiling for photographers and greeting donors. But Claire Dawson was there, and with her, Rachel, who seemed to have become her shadow. Midway through the evening, Claire took the stage for a speech, using her influence as a magnate's daughter to draw attention. Then, with a sharp smile, she did something unexpected. "I want to dedicate this evening to true commitments," she said, looking directly at Ethan and Emily. "Unlike certain temporary arrangements." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Emily. Rachel beside Claire smiled openly. Emily felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Claire continued, her voice sweet but venomous. "Some people think they can fool everyone with a facade, but the truth always comes out." The crowd murmured, and Emily, humiliated, let go of Ethan's arm and ran to the bathroom. There, alone, she let the tears fall. The agreement, already fragile, was now exposed. Ethan found her minutes later, knocking softly on the door. "Emily, please talk to me," he said, his voice heavy with concern. She opened the door, her eyes red. "This is over, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. Everyone knows it's a lie, and I'm tired of being humiliated." Ethan tried to argue, but Emily cut him off. "You don't understand. This isn't just about the agreement. It's my life, my mom, my pride." She took a deep breath, her decision made. "I want to leave the firm, and I want this to end." Before he could respond, she walked out, taking a taxi home. That night, Emily sat by Susan's side in the hospital, holding her hand. "You're so quiet, sweetheart," Susan said, her voice weak. "Is it that boy? Did he hurt you?" Emily shook her head, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, Mom. I'm just tired." But deep down, she felt a void. Ethan had promised to help, but the exposure at the gala and the betrayal of the real estate project made her doubt everything. She decided that, the next morning, she would submit her resignation letter. The idea of leaving Moore and Associates, where she had dreamed of building a career, hurt, but she needed to protect her heart. Meanwhile, in Ethan's penthouse, he paced back and forth, phone in hand. He called Mark, his assistant, with a clear order. "I want a full audit of the Capitol Hill project, and I want to know who leaked information to Claire." He knew Rachel was behind it, but Claire had used the gossip as a weapon. Ethan also knew that losing Emily wasn't just a matter of business. He was beginning to realize that his feelings for her were real, something that both scared and motivated him. He looked at a photo from the event, where Emily smiled beside him, and felt a pang in his chest. "I won't lose you," he murmured to himself, determined to fix everything. Emily, in her room, looked at the contract, now crumpled in her bag. She tore it slowly, each piece falling like a fragment of her dreams. But deep down, a small hope persisted. Maybe Ethan was more than the untouchable CEO. Maybe he truly cared. But for now, she needed to step away from the agreement, from him, and from the world that made her feel so small. The Seattle sky was clear that morning, with the sun reflecting off the skyscrapers and illuminating the streets of Capitol Hill. For Emily Carter, however, the daylight brought no relief. After the humiliation at the charity gala, where Claire Dawson publicly exposed the fake agreement between her and Ethan Moore, Emily felt as if the ground had been pulled from under her. The decision to leave Moore and Associates and end the contract with Ethan weighed heavily on her heart, but she believed it was the only way to reclaim her dignity. The image of Ethan, his green eyes, the smile that seemed genuine, still haunted her, but Emily forced herself to ignore it. She needed to focus on Susan, her mother, whose health remained fragile, and on the fight to save the family home, now under imminent threat from the real estate project. Emily spent the morning drafting her resignation letter, sitting at the kitchen table with the sound of traffic filtering through the window. She chose each word carefully. "I am grateful for the opportunity to work at Moore and Associates, but for personal reasons, I have decided to end my journey with the company," she wrote, her hands trembling. The idea of abandoning the job of her dreams, where she had fought so hard to prove her worth, was devastating. But the rumors, Rachel Bennett's gossip, and the betrayal of the real estate project made staying untenable. She sealed the envelope, resolved to deliver it on Monday. For now, she needed to visit Susan in the hospital, where new tests were being conducted. Meanwhile, Ethan Moore was in his penthouse, his face marked by sleepless nights. The scene from the gala replayed in his mind. Emily's wounded look, the way she fled, leaving him with an emptiness he hadn't expected to feel. Ethan knew he had failed her, not only by not preventing the exposure of the agreement, but by allowing the Capitol Hill real estate project to move forward under his nose. He spent the weekend buried in documents, and what he uncovered confirmed his suspicions. Richard Hayes, the senior executive on the board, had deliberately hidden details of the project to profit from Seattle's real estate speculation. Furious, Ethan called an extraordinary board meeting that morning. In the Moore and Associates conference room, the tension was almost tangible. Ethan, standing, faced the executives with cold determination. You approved a project that destroys communities without my consent, he said, tossing a report onto the table. This stops now. Moore and Associates will no longer represent the real estate company. Richard Hayes tried to argue, his voice calm but condescending. Ethan, this project is profitable. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. Ethan cut him off, his eyes blazing. Profit doesn't justify taking people's homes. I'm taking control of this, and if anyone disagrees, they can leave. He then announced a decision that shocked everyone. He was relinquishing part of his equity in the company to fund the suspension of the Capitol Hill project, ensuring that families, including Emily's, received fair compensation to stay in their homes. The news spread quickly, but Emily, unaware of Ethan's sacrifice, was at the hospital, holding Susan's hand. Though weak, her mother seemed more cheerful. You look so sad, sweetheart, Susan said, stroking Emily's face. Is it because of that boy? He seemed so kind when he visited me. Emily frowned, confused. Visited? When? Susan smiled. Last week, he brought flowers, said he wanted to make sure I was okay. Didn't he tell you? Emily felt a pang in her chest. Ethan had visited Susan without saying anything, a gesture that wasn't part of the contract. Why would he do that? Before she could process, the doctor entered with good news. Susan's tests showed improvement, and she could soon return home, provided she continued treatment. Meanwhile, Ethan tried to find Emily. He called her cell phone, but it went to voicemail. Determined, he went to Capitol Hill, only to discover that Emily had temporarily moved to a small rented apartment closer to the hospital. At the office, he confronted Rachel, who, under pressure, admitted to leaking information to Claire. I just told the truth, Rachel said, with a defiant smile. Ethan, keeping his composure, responded, Your truth ends here. You're suspended until further notice. He knew he needed to clean house, but his main focus was Emily. Claire Dawson, meanwhile, saw Ethan's withdrawal from the project as an opportunity. She showed up at his penthouse that night, dressed elegantly with a seductive smile. You're making a mistake, Ethan, she said, stepping closer. Abandoning the project, fighting the board, all for that intern? Come back to me. We can fix everything. Ethan looked at her coldly. There's nothing to fix, Claire. I don't love you, and I never did. The one I want is Emily. The words slipped out before he could stop them, and Claire, furious, stormed out, slamming the door. For the first time, Ethan admitted to himself that his feelings for Emily were deeper than he had ever imagined. The next morning, Emily decided to take a step back. She needed space, clarity. Walking through the streets of Pike Place Market, where the smell of fresh fish and flowers mingled, she stopped at a familiar café, Le Petit Coin. She sat at a corner table, ordered a latte, and tried to organize her thoughts. That's when fate intervened. Ethan, passing by the café by chance, saw her through the window. He entered, hesitant but determined. Emily, he said, stopping by her table. Can I sit? She looked at him, surprised, but nodded. Ethan spoke with a sincerity that disarmed her. I know I failed you. The real estate project, the gala, everything. But I stopped the project. I gave up part of my stake in the company to ensure your house and other families' homes are safe. Emily blinked, stunned. You did what? He continued, his voice firm yet gentle. I also know our agreement hurt you, and I hate myself for it. But Emily, this stopped being just a deal for me. I care about you, more than I should. He paused, his eyes searching hers. If you want to move on, I'll respect that. But I need you to know that everything I did was for you. Emily felt tears welling up but held them back. Ethan, I don't know what to say. You did so much, but I was so humiliated. How can I go back? He took her hand, his touch warm and steady. Don't go back. Let's start from scratch. No contracts, no lies. She looked at him, her heart torn between fear and a hope that was beginning to grow. Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was the hospital, informing her that Susan was ready to be discharged. I have to go, she said, standing. Ethan nodded. Go, but give me a chance, Emily, when you're ready. She left, her heart racing, unaware that the next day would bring the greatest revelation of all. The morning sun bathed Seattle in golden light, reflecting off the waters of Puget Sound and illuminating the streets of Capitol Hill. For Emily Carter, it was a day of new beginnings. The news that Susan, her mother, would be discharged from the hospital brought relief, but Ethan Moore's words at Le Petit Coin Café still echoed in her mind. He had sacrificed part of his fortune to save her house and those of other families, a gesture that defied everything she thought she knew. About the Millionaire CEO, the resignation letter still sealed in her bag, now seemed like a hasty decision. Emily felt torn. The fear of getting hurt again battled against a growing hope that perhaps Ethan was more than the man from the contract. That morning, while helping Susan settle back home, Emily found an anonymous letter in the mailbox. The envelope without a sender contained documents detailing Ethan's decision to relinquish millions in Moore and Associates stock to halt the Capitol Hill real estate project. There was also a handwritten note. You deserve to know the truth. He did this for you. Emily recognized the handwriting of Mark, Ethan's assistant, and her heart raced. She read the documents, each line confirming what Ethan had said at the cafe. He hadn't just stopped the project. He had given up a significant portion of his wealth to ensure the safety of the affected families. The weight of the gala's humiliation began to fade, replaced by a mix of gratitude and confusion. Why would he do so much for her? Determined to understand, Emily decided to go to Moore and Associates. She needed to see Ethan not as the intern or the fake girlfriend, but as someone seeking answers. Upon arriving at the glass skyscraper, she noticed unusual activity in the lobby. Colleagues were whispering, and the security guard, Joe, with an intrigued smile, said, "You missed a lot, Emily." Confused, she went up to the 22nd floor, but Ethan's office was empty. The secretary informed her that he was no longer with the company. He resigned yesterday, she said hesitantly. He's now working on a new project, something about free legal aid. Emily felt the ground shake. Ethan had left Moore and Associates? Why? With her heart racing, Emily got the address of Ethan's new office, a small space in Belltown, far from corporate glamour. Upon arriving, she found a modest setup with white walls and simple furniture, where volunteers organized files and assisted clients. Ethan was there without a suit, wearing a dress shirt with rolled-up sleeves, helping a family fill out forms. He looked different, lighter, more human. When he saw her, his eyes lit up, but there was caution in his expression. "Emily," he said, approaching, "what are you doing here?" She held the anonymous letter's documents, her voice trembling. "You gave up everything, your position, the money, see, for my house. Why?" Ethan took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on her. "Because it wasn't just about the house, Emily. It was about you. From that day at the restaurant when you made me laugh without wanting anything in return, I knew you were different. And when I saw what the project was doing to you and your mom, I couldn't stand by." He paused, his voice softening. "I was never motivated by money, Emily. I wanted to make a difference, and you showed me how." Emily felt tears welling up, but this time she didn't hold them back. "You didn't tell me any of this. Why did you hide it?" Ethan smiled, a little sadly. "Because I didn't want you to feel obligated to anything. I wanted you to choose for yourself, not out of gratitude." He took a step forward, hesitant. "I love you, Emily. Not as part of a deal, but for real. And if you don't feel the same, that's okay. I just needed you to know." His words hit her like a wave. Emily looked at him, seeing not the untouchable CEO, but the man who had risked everything for her. "I'm scared too," she admitted, her voice low. "But since that restaurant mix-up, you haven't left my mind. And now I know I can't let you go." Before Ethan could respond, she stepped forward and hugged him, his warmth enveloping her like a home. He pulled her close, and for a moment, the world around them vanished. Days later, Susan, now home and recovering, hosted Emily and Ethan for dinner. The mother, radiant, held Ethan's hand. "You saved our home, young man, and you brought my daughter's smile back." Ethan laughed, looking at Emily. "She's the one who saved me, Susan." The dinner was filled with laughter, with Susan sharing stories of Emily's childhood while Ethan listened with a sparkle in his eyes. Emily, for the first time in months, felt at peace. At Moore and Associates, Ethan's departure caused an earthquake. Richard Hayes took over as interim CEO, but without Ethan's charisma, the firm faced challenges. Rachel, after her suspension, resigned, unable to handle the consequences of her schemes. Claire Dawson, rejected by Ethan, turned her attention to new interests, leaving Seattle behind. Emily, meanwhile, decided not to submit her resignation letter. Instead, she accepted an offer to work with Ethan at his legal aid organization, where she could use her talent to help people like her mother. Months later, Emily and Ethan walked hand in hand through Pike Place Market as the sun set over Puget Sound. "Have you ever thought that it all started with a mistake at the restaurant?" Emily asked, laughing. Ethan pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "The best mistake of my life." They stopped to watch the sunset, the city glowing in the background. Emily knew the future wouldn't be easy. Ethan's organization was just starting, and she had much to learn as a lawyer. But with him by her side, she felt she could face anything. The shocking secret, in the end, wasn't just Ethan's sacrifice, but his true motivation. He was never the CEO driven by wealth or power, but a man searching for purpose. And Emily, with her authenticity and courage, had shown him what truly mattered. Together, they built not just a love, but a life dedicated to making a difference, proving that sometimes a wrong encounter can lead to the right path. What did you think of the story? Drop an emoji in the comments to show what it meant to you. Have you ever experienced a story of overcoming like Emily's? Share it with us. Rate this emotional tale from 0 to 10, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell to never miss a video, and share this story with anyone else who loves tales of resilience. Let's spread this inspiration together.